Yes, as every book addict knows, the last Thursday of October is the most important day in the year. And you know why? Because that is the evening when the business book of the year, Financial Times Goldman Sachs, is awarded. And every time in April they publish a long list of 20 books, and then I start guessing what's the one going to be. Now, I've taken one which was on the long list, which was even on the short list, which was one of the top 3, but fortunately did not win the award. It's a book called The Big Short by Michael Lewis. Now, Michael Lewis is famous because he wrote what the English call a seminal book in the early 90s called Liar's Poker. And Liar's Poker is a little bit of a diary of a young lad working for Salomon Brothers, an American investment bank going bust. Accidentally, all these banks with brothers go bust, and many people say if they'd been called sisters, they wouldn't have gone bust. But his days at Salomon Brothers sort of still resonate in this particular book. Now, this is not another book on the financial crisis, but it's a little bit, you've got this comic in the UK called Roy Rovers, right?
Yeah.
About a small boy who's just experiencing everything. Now, he's telling the whole story, and it's a bit of a laugh, but it's real, and it's frightening. So he's been interviewing people who've played an active role in the whole CDO thing, so the collateralized debt obligation things, and credit default swaps market, technical stuff. So it's got a bit of technicality, this book. But he doesn't interview CEOs, but he interviews just 2 ordinary lads who used to work for a baker, rented a garage, and started a hedge fund. So this is real. And they got a nice suit, bought a computer, went to receptions and picked up some abbreviations like CDO, interest rate swaps and everything. And they made up their stories, and they went to Goldman Sachs and to Morgan Stanley and to JP Morgan. And they actually learned from the responses they get from their awful questions, and sort of their level of knowledge increased. And in about 3 or 4 months' time, they found they were ready for the market. They went into JP Morgan and got a loan of $100 million to start buying shares. And they started buying CDOs and credit default swaps, and they sold them to other parties, etc., etc. There is 4 stories, so it's really a novel basically. It's 4 stories which start independently, and then typically these 4 people, which at first sight don't have anything to do with each other, meet. But they know from each other that they don't know anything about it, so they sort of avoid being they avoid exposing the other. So this is really a book which is fascinating. It's very funny. It reads like it reads like a novel, and it's funny, but it's actually bitterly true. And it feels a little bit like being shown around in an operating theater in a hospital and discovering empty bottles of whiskey on the floor. So you really get out that this whole thing was a sham created by some. And when those who should have had the brains to say, but this is bollocks, were too snobbish to say, but what you're telling me doesn't work. So he's not the one who's sort of writing in the style where I knew it all, but he's simply explaining in layman's language why you can never price a certain financial product with a spread over 2% over a US government bond if it hasn't a containable or a risk inside.
And the relevance to business?
None. No, not at all. It doesn't teach you anything about marketing.
Okay.
It teaches you nothing about strategy. It teaches you nothing about HR, but it gives you a wonderful insight in the shit we've got into. So this is really bad reading, not bad and bad. No, it is bedtime reading. So don't go and read this if you can't stand another horror story. But the tricky thing, it's funny. It's funnily written. But if you want to learn anything from it, do not touch it.